starting the YouTube. All right, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining this evening as we continue our journey through nectarian talks from wonderful speakers throughout the world. And tonight we are very blessed to have Her Grace Madhumati Devi Dasi Mataji once again on this channel. You remember her from last time when she spoke back in, I think it was August or something, and it was very much appreciated, and devotees said, let's have her again. So definitely we wanted to schedule you as soon as possible. So thank you once again for agreeing and giving us your precious time. And tonight's topic is a very interesting one. It's a question: can you spot a Mahajan? It's very interesting, thought-provoking, so we look forward to hearing about this topic. Hare Krishna, welcome.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. I'll just say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the verse that I have chosen this evening, is quoted twice in Madhya Leela. No, once in Madhya Leela and once in Adi Leela. It is, and it's not from the Bhagavatam. It's from Mahabharata. Tarko pratishtha shutayo vibhinna nasa vrishiyasya matam na bhinnam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam Mahajano yena gata sapantha. Translation: dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajans advocate. Srila Prabhupada's purport: this is a verse spoken by Yudhishthira Maharaj in Mahabharata, Vanaparva 313.117. So as I mentioned, that this verse is quoted twice in CC, once spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, and another time by Prakashananda Saraswati after transformation was taken place. However, in both the times, verses quoted, Prabhupada only says one line purport that I just read. So because I wanted to read a purport on the topic I'm speaking, and Prabhupada does not give any purport, I like to read a purport. It's purport to Adi 8:17. I read the verse and then I read the purport. One who does not accept the glories of the Panchatattva but still makes a show of devotional service to Krishna can never achieve the mercy of Krishna or advance to the ultimate goal. Purport: if one is seriously interested in Krishna conscious activities, he must be ready to follow the rules and regulations laid down by the acharyas, and he must understand their conclusions. The Shastra says, Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gatha sapantha. It is very difficult to understand the secret of Krishna consciousness, but one who advances by the instruction of the previous acharyas and follows in the footsteps of his predecessors in the line of disciplic succession will have success. Others will not. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says in this connection, Chariya Vaishnava Seva Nistarat Piyeche Keba. Unless one serves the spiritual master and acharyas, one cannot be liberated. Elsewhere he says, Echai Gosayara Muitara Das Tasabara Padarenu Mora Panchagras. I simply accept a person who follows in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis, and the dust of such a person's lotus feet is my food. Nama Om Shabadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamite Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So here we see that Srila Prabhupada is telling us that we have to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans. And in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3, verse 20, 21, there's a list of Mahajans. Swambhu Narada Shambhu Kumaram Kapilo Manu Prahlado Janako Bhishmo Balir Vyasaki Vayam. So there mentions 12 Mahajans, and Prabhupada mentions many times in his lectures about these 12 Mahajans. The reason I actually chose this topic today is because we've been reading here in Alachua about Bhishma Dev. We just finished, today was actually the day that we started the new chapter. But for the last 2 months, I would say over 2 months, we were studying Bhishma Dev's passing of Bhishma Dev. And it was just so enlivening to hear about Bhishma Dev. And so he was on my mind. And so when the topic was asked, I thought, oh, I'd like to speak about Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev is a great Mahajan. And I wanted to tell you what we've been hearing a little bit about Bhishma Dev, little background. So basically the battle is over and the Pandavas have won. Bhishma Dev is lying on the bed of arrows after being shot and by Arjun's arrows. And after the battle is over, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he kind of goes a little bit into a very down period, a depression or whatever you may call it. And he was feeling very bad about that because of, to put him on the throne, so many people, 640 million people died because to put him on the throne. And so you can imagine the burden or what he was feeling because of who Yudhishthira Maharaj is, his kind-heartedness, his soft-heartedness, and such a Vaishnav. And he was feeling, oh, because of me, this has happened. So he wasn't even able to rule the kingdom because he was feeling that way. And Krishna tried to preach to him, but that didn't really make much of a difference. And so Krishna said, okay, why don't you hear? Krishna's desire was that he should hear from a great Mahajan like Bhishma Dev. And so everybody, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Pandavas, and many other great sages went along with the Pandavas at the place where Bhishma Dev was lying on the bed of arrows. Prabhupada gives like a whole list of sages, and I want to just read it to you, just to show the greatness of Bhishma Dev. There were sages like Parvata Muni, Narada Muni, Dhaumya, Vyasadev himself, Brihad Ashva, Bharadwaj, Parshuram, and disciples like Vasishtha, and others that are not so, at least to my mind. And also Sukdev Goswami was also there. And so all these sages were there, and Bhishma Dev, while he was lying on the bed of arrows, he actually greeted them according to time, place, and circumstances, and according to who these great sages were. And then the Pandavas came and sat next to Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev, a great warrior, I mean, the greatest warrior you could call him. He, at that stage, when he's on a bed of arrows, which was very painful, of course, he was so affectionate, and he felt so much feelings for the Pandavas. And he actually had tears in his eyes when the Pandavas came next to him. It's important to see that how Bhishma Dev was so kind-hearted, so soft-hearted, and yet such a warrior. And so you see those kinds of you always see in all these characters that I read from the Shastra. They have such emotions and extreme emotions that are there. And so he welcomes the Pandavas, and then he very affectionately expresses to the Pandavas that you're such amazing souls, you are such righteous people, and yet you went through such sufferings. He says, oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustice you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. So he expresses those to the Pandavas. And he addresses to Kunti Devi how she had to go through so much. Her husband passed away. So he's remembering everything while he's lying on the bed of arrows. He's seeing with so much compassion and feeling for what these people had to go through. They're his family, and he was fighting on the opposite side. He was actually going to kill the Pandavas. He had promised he was going to kill the Pandavas. And now here they are, and he's expressing so much affection for them. And he's saying, you're such great souls, and yet you had to suffer. And he addresses that is due to time. And then he starts glorifying Krishna. He says that no one can know the plan of the Lord, Shri Krishna. And he's basically saying he's in charge. And he also tells him that, you think that he's your maternal cousin, he's your friend, he was your messenger, chariot driver, yeah. But the fact is that he is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in that way, he started meditating on Krishna. And he says to the Pandavas, he says, let me read this to you. Text 30. No, it says, then he starts saying, may my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face with eyes as red as the rising sun is smiling, kindly await me at the moment when I quit this material body. So he's talking to the Pandavas, but then his meditation goes to Krishna, and he starts thinking, he knows that he's going to leave his body, and so he starts talking about Krishna and meditating on him. And right at that time, Yudhishthira Maharaj senses that he's going to leave. So at that stage, Yudhishthira Maharaj asks him about dharma, about Istri dharma and other varnashram dharma and all other dharmas that are there, the king, specifically the kingly duties. And as a king, he wanted to know all the dharmas. And so Bhishma Dev, again, lying on the bed of arrows, and I bring that up again, bed of arrows, basically stating what kind of agony he was in, and he's speaking about all the dharma. That's how great Bhishma Deva was as a Mahajan. And so he expresses all the different everything to Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then after that, after him explaining, then he pulls himself from that expression to Yudhishthira Maharaj and again fully meditates on his Lord. Bhishma Dev says, at that stage, he says, let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Shri Krishna. So here's a Mahajan who did so much in his life, and at the time of his passing away, he is thinking He is now pulling away from everything else, everything, but just fully meditating on Krishna. And they are just beautiful prayers, what he offers to Lord Shri Krishna. Maybe I'll read one or two. He says, "Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Shri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajadham. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord." So here, Bhishma Dev, a warrior, although he has a chivalrous rasa with Krishna, he is meditating on Lord Krishna with the gopis. And then he also says, that I thought was really nice. He says, at the Rajasuya Yagya performed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world. And in that great assembly, Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all. This happened during my presence, and I remember the incident. I thought it was interesting. He says, this happened during my presence, and I remember the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. So to keep his mind on the Lord, he was remembering that. So this is what we have been studying for the last 2 months, and it's just been very, very enlivening to hear the exalted position of Bhishma Dev. Now let's look a little bit about his life. This is about his passing away. Looking at his life, there are a couple, we know that his whole life was about his vow, and that was he was such a noble person that he sacrificed everything for his father. And that's why his name as Bhishma Dev. However, there are a couple other things that comes to my mind, and probably to all of your mind too, is Draupadi being disrobed. When Draupadi was being disrobed, we are all aware of that Draupadi asked Bhishma Dev questions, and that is she a slave or is she not a slave? And Bhishma Dev, the most learned person in the assembly, did not say anything. Here's a woman being unprotected, being assaulted by Duryodhan, Dushashan. It's called Asat Sabha. Actually, Prabhupada mentions that this is called, I think Kunti Devi uses the word Asat Sabha in her prayers, actually. And Prabhupada mentions that Asat is considered Asat Sabha because they were elder people like Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya and Dhritarashtra who did not speak up when Draupadi was being disrobed. He's a Mahajan. And if a woman is being assaulted and somebody doesn't come to their rescue, that's a hard one. If I was sitting in Duryodhan's side and that had happened, I would say, yes, Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan, because he's Mahajan, because he is on Duryodhan's side. And if I'm Duryodhan's side, he is my Mahajan. Prabhupada talks about it. Everybody has their Mahajan. So Duryodhan has his Mahajan. If I was on Duryodhan's side, I would say, yes, finally Bhishma Dev, I can see that he didn't speak up, and therefore he did the right thing. However, if I was sitting on the Pandava side, and if Bhishma Dev had acted like that, not if, he did, but if I was there and seen that was going on, I would not have recognized him as a Mahajan. if somebody was sitting next to me and whispered in my ear, do you know, by the way, Bhishma Devi is a Mahajan? And I would say, are you crazy? How could he be a Mahajan? So the question is not whether he is a Mahajan or not. He is a Mahajan. Fact is, I don't recognize him as a Mahajan is my own disqualification. In other words, you have to have qualifications to know if somebody is a Mahajan. Actually, Srila Prabhupada, he one time said, whenever, this is Srila Prabhupada saying, whenever I met my Guru Maharaj, he would always treat me very affectionately. Sometimes my god brothers would criticize because I would talk a little freely with him, and they would quote this English saying, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So it seems like from this statement that Srila Prabhupada said, it seems that his god brothers who would say that they didn't recognize Srila Prabhupada. Actually, Srila Prabhupada said that, he also said, my Guru Maharaj was always very, very affectionate to me. When I offered obeisances, he used to return, Dasosmi, I'm your servant. So from that statement of Srila Prabhupada, it seems like his god brothers did not recognize Srila Prabhupada as a great soul or as a Mahajan. There's a certain qualification that is needed to recognize a Mahajan. Last week, I here in Alachua, I was with some friends at the Eco Village. We have an eco farm here in Alachua. All of you come and visit. It's very beautifully done. And so we were having our own little festival of the Holy Name. Few of us were going there every day to chant. So as we were chanting, and I was looking around, and certainly this topic was in my mind. So I was looking at the devotee who was sitting next to me and chanting, and I was thinking, oh, if I look at her life is dedicated to Srila Prabhupada for so many, many, many years. She does so much service, never stops doing, doesn't breathe, practically speaking. She's the one who actually built the eco farm that we have. She's built this beautiful, and I mean beautiful, Vrinda Devi temple. So beautiful. If you go in there, you actually feel like you're in the spiritual world. And she's built it by her hand, her own hands. It's just amazing. It's walking into the spiritual world. And she dresses the deity so beautifully, and she gives nice classes. Everything is just good with everything. But her life is just dedicated to Srila Prabhupada and the movement. And I thought, is she a Mahajan? And then I saw the other devotee who was sitting across me on a chair, and I thought about her. By the way, this devotee, her name was Akuti. I don't know if I mentioned that. And so this other devotee was sitting there, and she joined when she was 15 or so. And ever since that, she has just been nothing but serving Srila Prabhupada and the mission. Just amazing, just so loving, so caring, setting such a nice example, such a nice grandmother with beautiful grandkids and kids. And I'm thinking, well, I think she's a Mahajan. And as we're sitting there, then one devotee, now this was sunset. It was, we could see the sun setting. It was kind of getting dark. And all of a sudden, from far away, we could see this devotee walking towards the cows. Such a beautiful scene. And she was walking toward those cows, and we indicated to please, if you want to come and join for the kirtan. So she came, and she said, yeah, I come here to see Vrinda Devi and to see the cows. She says, it reminds me of Vrindavan. The cows are there, and the sun is setting, and then she started singing a bhajan, Bhaja Hure Mana, so beautifully like Jamuna Devi would sing. And that's our Swarga Mataji. And I thought, is she a Mahajan? And then as this was going on, we were just, few of us were just having our own little kirtan, and these people just walking by. And then another devotee came, and he went to the Vrinda temple to have darshan, and we told him to come in to chant, and he was going for some other place to chant, and then he said, okay, he'll come and chant. So he chanted Hare Krishna. And I thought, wow, this devotee has dedicated all his life to spreading glories of Srila Prabhupada and affected so many devotees all around the world. That was Yadubar Prabhu. Is he a Mahajan? Then I saw this other devotee sitting across me, who was sitting on a chair that I've lived with him for the last 38 years. And I see that his life has nothing but dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I live with him. I see what he does. I know him. I think I do. Is he a Mahajan? But then the question comes, well, I wasn't able to recognize Bhishma Dev as a Mahajan. I have no qualification of recognizing somebody as a Mahajan or not. And certainly there are not only 12 Mahajans. Prabhupada clearly indicates, as I was doing research on this topic, that there's so many Mahajans. He said, Arjun, he heard from Krishna, and he's a Mahajan. We hear from Arjun and repeat the same thing, be a Mahajan. And so yeah, no, there are not only 12 Mahajans. There's so many Mahajans, but they could be Mahajans around me. And so my conclusion is that although I may not know who is a Mahajan, but I realize that for me, people, these souls that I was there with, they are Mahajans. Maybe they're not Mahajans for everybody, but they're my Mahajans that I want to follow in their footsteps. If I follow in their footsteps, if I follow in the footsteps of Vegvati, I know I would be on the right path. I for sure know that. I don't have to question. My heart tells me they are Mahajans. So maybe we need Shastric evidence, but I'll give you Shastric evidence for that. Srila Prabhupada says the quality of a Mahajan. That's very interesting. The nice thing about giving class is that you actually sit down and do some work for a change. At least that's when I do little work, study of Srila Prabhupada's books. But now I just have to find it in my notes. Okay. Srila Prabhupada says, you see what happened, my computer went off today and I didn't have my computer, and okay, here it is. If you simply, listen to this, what Srila Prabhupada says. If you simply speak what Krishna says, then you become his representative. Don't manufacture. Don't be overprudent manufacturing. Simply to follow Krishna and his representatives. Then you become a Mahajan. Otherwise, Prabhupada says, you're a nonsense, mudha. Become a mudha if you don't repeat. Namam dushkritano mudha prapadyante naradhama. So, following, it's interesting, I thought, the conclusion is that the qualification, hearing about Mahajans, about Bhishma Dev for last 2.5 months almost. And the interesting part was that nobody is tired of hearing about Bhishma Dev, because even this morning, although we went to the next chapter, the funny part was that it was a new chapter, but the speaker spoke about Bhishma Dev. It's like, haven't you heard enough? Haven't you spoken enough about Bhishma Dev? I mean, don't you get tired of hearing it? But no, the speaker again brought about Bhishma Dev, and everybody was interested in hearing about Bhishma Dev. And so, so that is the influence of a true Mahajan. I may not have recognized Bhishma Dev as a Mahajan if I was sitting in that assembly. Neither did he protect Draupadi, and not only that, he fought against Krishna's devotees. But he is a Mahajan. And that is the influence of such a Mahajan, is that for me, after hearing for those 2 months, is I actually have recognized more Mahajans. And that is, to me, a gift from Bhishma Dev, studying from him, hearing about him through Srila Prabhupada and his purports, and from all the Vaishnavas who were speaking so nicely about Bhishma Dev, is that there are so many Mahajans. We just have to be able to spot them. So I pray that all of you can look around and spot some Mahajans for yourself. Spot some Mahajans. And if you can't spot any Mahajan, then please do a study group on Bhishma Dev and the other 11 Mahajans. Prabhupada writes 12 Mahajans, and each Mahajan is unique. It's interesting. I thought the question may come, well, can you become a Mahajan? Surely, Prabhupada, as I read, you can become a Mahajan. But Prabhupada even mentions about Bali Maharaj, and he said something to the effect that Bali Maharaj later became a Mahajan. Yeah. He says, similarly, Maharaj Bali also later became a Mahajan. So it's not like the Mahajans are born Mahajans. You can later become a Mahajan. And Prabhupada also mentions that he says, Brahma is a Mahajan and he is Grihastha. Swambhu, Narada, he is a Brahmachari. And Lord Shiva, he is also a Grihastha. Prahlad Maharaj, he is also a Grihastha. It doesn't matter whether you're a Grihastha or Sannyasi or Brahmachari. That is a Mahajan. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, to become a Mahajan, I'm saying, can you spot a Mahajan? And then you can follow a Mahajan. So I'd like to end here if you have any questions or comments on it, subject matter.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Very thought-provoking. It's not just 1 dozen that we know of, that we have heard about, but there's so many. And I think you raised a very good point. You did mention, what is my qualification? What qualification do I have to recognize who a Mahajan is? But then you also mentioned how, we are inspired and moved by these devotees to do something and become better devotees, and something how they themselves behave, how pure they are at heart, and their simplicity, whatever the wonderful qualities are, and we want them to influence us in that direction. So thank you so much for pointing this out. It's such an important point. So yeah, we have plenty of time. If anybody has any comments, questions, or reflections, or anything else that you want to share, please feel free. You may unmute yourself if you like. So anyone?
May I go
Yes, please, Prabhu.
next? Okay, thank you. That was so inspirational. Actually, I wish you would speak for another 2 or 3 hours, and we would really get immersed in Bhishma Dev and your realizations. Vegavati has been posting some nice comments, which I agree with, by the way, in the Zoom chat. My question is, I always think of Bhishma Dev with wonder because of all his extraordinary material accomplishments. And on top of that, being a warrior, how he was able to completely immerse himself in Krishna consciousness and think of Krishna with pure devotion. Could you speak about that? Because that's something I always marvel about. I mean, I work in corporate life, and it's difficult enough in corporate life to think of, and I'm not fighting any wars or killing anyone or defending a kingdom. And it's difficult enough to think of Krishna in those circumstances, let alone as a warrior tasked with all the responsibilities that he had.
Well, Bhishma Dev, that's one thing that caught my attention, which I read to you, and I'll read it again, and that might help to see how he's saying that. He said that Krishna, in the assembly at the Rajasuya Yagya, Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence. And I remember, so this is the key point, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. So that incident that happened in his presence, that helped him to keep the Lord in his mind. So I thought, yeah, that really caught my attention. And so that kind of gives you a clue. He's almost giving us like, how, your question is, how do you do this? Yeah. And so he very clearly explains that this is how I did it. I remembered that incident specifically in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. And so I guess one thing that we can learn from it is that this is how we can do it while we're in our situation. Certainly, he was in the battle and all that, but we're also in a battle all the time. Whether we're sitting in the office and doing work, it requires a lot of focus. You have to have focus in doing so. And so it is like a battle. Even in a battle, you're focusing on killing your enemy or whatever, or in management, he's ruling, helping Dhritarashtra to rule. But he took something to help him to remember. So in this way, we can also choose something in our life that is very significant for us to help us to remember. Like, for example, if we are pujaris and we dress the deities, and that one particular time that you had that exchange with some kind of thing where you could see that Krishna revealed himself to you, or you had some dealings with your spiritual master and something very special that had happened in your life, is to write those things down and help us remember those things over and over and over again. And I find that by remembering or reading something that strikes you, Like, for example, this struck me. And if I kind of keep on meditating on that particular sentence, I find that more realization comes, a deeper realization comes. And so, not that we need to read so much or study so much or do so much, some things that really affect us or things that have happened in our life that has helped us to remember Krishna. Those things, we can keep on meditating on them. And so I guess that's what Bhishma Dev said he did.
Yeah. May I have a small follow-up? I know Mahesh Pandit Prabhu wants to go next. Two years ago, I think it was, or maybe 3 years ago, Mother Kulangana from the Bhaktivedanta Manor, very exalted devotee. She was, in her last days and weeks, and several other exalted souls were coming to see her and read to her and chant for her. So my wife was there at the time, and she told me this incident. It left a very deep impression on my heart. She said Shivaram Swami, she was in the room with Mother Kulangana. Shivaram Swami came and asked her very gently, what is your favorite pastime from Krishna's, from Krishna book or from the Bhagavatam? And so she mentioned, and I forget what that pastime was, but the point remained in my mind. And so he sat there and he read that pastime to her, and then they had kirtan. And so the point that struck me was, now when I read and something strikes me that is like really inspiring, or I would like to remember on my deathbed, I make it a point to, again and again go back to it, and also tell my wife, and, so maybe if she's around and she can remind me that, hey, this is what you want to meditate upon, and so on. But it's something where you can cultivate this as a meditation, because at that moment, who knows what our mentality and our condition and whatever might be. But if you've done a lifetime of cultivation, as clearly she had done, then it'd be easy for us to just say, oh yeah, Bhishma Dev goading Krishna to fight with him, and Krishna running with his wheel in his hand to fight with him. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. And then you can just meditate on that.
Actually, it might be a very good idea. It's a very good point that you bring up. Sometimes we write so many things on our wish list of like when we leave our body, So I think it's nice that if we're write down, and many times I've thought about that, is to write what kirtan we want to hear, or what pastime, or do we, maybe we don't want to hear Hare Krishna kirtan all the time. Maybe we kind of people that like to hear Bhagavatam more than so different things. I think it's important that we do write down, because those who are close to us may not be there, that may know us and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, thank you for bringing that point up. Hare Krishna. Any other questions?
Yes, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu has a question. Go ahead, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Madhumati Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for your detailed lecture about Bhishma Pita. Since you've been listening this about Bhishma Pita from last 2.5 months, I always had a problem with that incident that Bhishma Pita went through. Let's see if can it come on the screen?
You want to share your screen, Prabhu?
Yeah, no, just myself, I guess.
No, we can see you. You're definitely on the screen when you talk.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yep.
So about the incident happened, about Draupadi's incident, and at that time, Bhishma Pita did not speak up. So is it because he owed something to Duryodhan, because Duryodhan was a king, and that's the reason he didn't say anything, or he didn't want to get involved in that incident? Because of course he was able to speak something about that. It's right or wrong. She asked particularly that is it is it a right or wrong? So, and then as you mentioned, if somebody is on Duryodhana's side, then they say, oh yeah, he's a Mahajan. And if somebody is on Pandava's side, then they would think that, Pita should have spoke up and said, what you guys are doing, and things like that. But then he didn't speak up, and still we consider him as a Mahajan because actually Mahajan can make mistakes. Is that the way of understanding it? Please clarify that.
There are different ways to understand. One thing is certainly that was Krishna's desire it to happen. Krishna uses his own devotees. Prabhupada says in one place that Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna wanted to show that if you do the wrong thing, and he was talking maybe in this particular instance that Bhishma they fought on the wrong side, and if you do so, you will definitely be defeated. So he used Bhishma Dev as an example to show that if you're going to be fighting on the wrong side, then you're going to be defeated. And certainly everybody was defeated, including Bhishma Dev was laid on the bed of arrows. And so, yes, so that's one level of understanding, is that this is, Krishna wanted to show that if you're going to do something wrong, then. Also, I while doing this research, I saw Prabhupada said something to the effect that he said, just try to understand. This is a room conversation or something. Just try to understand. Bhishma is accepted here as Mahajan, as authority. And what was his business? He wanted to kill Krishna and Arjun. Just try to understand. Prabhupada is saying again, just try to understand. Therefore, we have to follow only the instruction of Mahajan. Otherwise, we will be bewildered. So he's saying not to follow as what they say, not how they do, how they act, So yeah, the Prabhupada says, otherwise we will be bewildered. So follow only the instruction of the Mahajan.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's one aspect, one way to understand is that. And there's so many other things that we can get from there. At least my nature, my tendency to see is that the only way that we could know that Bhishma Dev was a Mahajan is when he left his body, yeah? That's where we see, because otherwise when you read the Mahabharata, reading the Mahabharata doesn't make you feel like Bhishma Dev was a devotee of Krishna even, like that element is not there. I mean, Bhagavatam is the one that brings out the essence, and we only get to hear the essence of Bhishma Dev being a devotee in the Bhagavatam. That's the amazing part about the Bhagavatam, that it shows a side that we would never know. But another thing that we can see is that even though Bhishma Dev took the wrong side, so to speak, and he didn't do that, but he's still a Mahajan. It's like when our own devotees may make a mistake. It's not the end of the world. They still be Mahajans. They can still be Mahajans. We have seen in our movement, people who have dedicated their life to Srila Prabhupada and have made some mistakes, or some things that maybe even grievous mistakes, but they have not left the path of of Krishna consciousness, and does that exempt them from being a Mahajan? No. I mean,
That
that's one thing that at least I see in this whole situation. And we see so many of those examples actually in our scriptures. And so, in other words, not to judge the situation, not to judge.
there's a durachara.
Yeah,
That in my mind. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Madhumati Mataji, thank you very much for your great answer. And I'm very satisfied with your answer because it was Krishna's desire, first of all.
Yes.
And then to show that whoever does wrong end up in a wrong side, losing it. And also Mahajan also does mistakes. That doesn't mean they are not Mahajan. Very good. Thank you very much, Mataji.
And yet there's another point, and yet we see the amazing part is that although Bhishma Dev did not respond to Draupadi, or although he fought on the wrong side, amazing part is that he asked Yudhishthira Maharaj, who is Dharmaraj, who knows all the religious principles. He goes and asks Yudhishthira Maharaj to hear from Bhishma Dev, who fought on the wrong side.
That's right.
And who did not protect Draupadi, and yet he asked Yudhishthira Maharaj, the emblem of religion, to hear from Bhishma Dev. So what a great, just amazing. It's just
that's a very good point. I didn't realize it. Yes, very nice.
Amazing. Yeah.
Thank you very much again.
Okay.
Thank
you for your question.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, please go ahead. A question from Vijay Krishna Prabhu from Portugal. Go ahead. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Madan Gopal Das Prabhu, thank you for your service. Madhumati Devi Dasi Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. My question is related to the following. It is well known, at least in the Vaishnava circles, that when a person becomes a devotee of Lord Krishna, this person develops all the good qualities which can be found in the character of the demigods.
Yes.
And if a person is very advanced, related to material advancement, but he's not a devotee of Lord Krishna, he has no good qualifications. So my question is as follows, if I may ask, what is the difference between a Mahajan and a demigod? And I'm asking this question because on the list of the 12 Mahajans, we see that we find demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. So I repeat my question, what is the difference between a Mahajan and a demigod?
Wow, that's an interesting question. A good question. I wouldn't know how to answer that, to be honest. Mahajan literally means a great personality. Demigod is more, I would say, a position in the heavenly planets. So to be honest, I wouldn't know how to answer that question. Maybe others could chime in there a little bit. And yes, Vegbati Prabhu?
I would say there's definitely an overlap. The demigods are, what is it? That the Mahavakya of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is Ete Changsa Kala Pumsam Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. Indrari Vyakalam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. He comes millennium after millennium for the purpose of destroying the enemies of Indra. So the demigods are devotees, but generally speaking, we understand they have some material desire for control. So they're put in that position where they can do some controlling, but they're devotees, in contrast to the Daityas that are turning away from Krishna. But so a Mahajan, it just means, I don't mean just means, but I would say without the material desires. Those great souls, they have no other desire but to serve the Lord. And yes, Brahma, Lord Shiva, they're certainly great demigods. And sometimes in Krishna's pastimes, Lord Brahma may make some mistake and think he can bewilder Krishna, the cowherd boy, by stealing his friends and putting them in a cave. But these are pastimes. Actually, I've been reading about Lord Brahma and the creation, and he has one whole body. He has to drop it's from his backside, and the shadows and the demons are coming. And I mean, there's on such a great level, we can't even imagine the power that they have. I more think of demigods as powerful, but they're devotees. But the Mahajans, they're great souls. They have no other purpose. So there's an overlap. That's how I would respond.
Vegabati Dasi Mataji, are you saying that this is obvious because of the list, or because of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva being listed as Mahajans? Are you saying with your helpful answer that it is possible for a demigod to be recognized as a Mahajan, like in the case of Shiva and Lord Brahma? It may happen.
Why not? As Madhumati Prabhu pointed out, a person can become a Mahajan. So even Bali Maharaj, he's born in a demon family. Prahlad Maharaj, the son of Hiranyakashipu, but the behavior is devoted to Lord Krishna. And I was appreciating Madhumati's point about how I was thinking of the green mango. All of us, we're on the path. We're trying to become Krishna conscious. That's a wonderful thing. That's a characteristic of a great soul. But we may have also quite some baggage, like the demigods have their baggage of power. We may have maybe more petty baggages, but they will also fall off if we stay on the path. So I don't know if that answers your question. But
yes, it answers. Thank you very much. Madhumati Devi Dasi also, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Vegabati.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much for a very engaging discussion. I think there's no limit to the end of, there's no limit to the glories of the Mahajans and this discussion, really. But there is a limit to our class, unfortunately. But yeah, we're out of time. But thank you again, Madhumati Mataji, for giving us your valuable time and for spending the extra time for doing some more deep diving and research to prepare for this, because we really appreciate all that effort that you put in, and it really comes out in a very sweet way. So,
Make sure you spot some Mahajans around you, everybody.
yes.
That's your homework.
Yes, see if we can spot. I'm spotting quite a few of among the who are here today. So, definitely. I mean, at least half a dozen or a dozen, But thank you so much, and thank you all, dear devotees, for joining on a Thursday. I know it's middle of the week, but this is a wonderful way to keep in touch with Krishna consciousness. Especially some of us can't go to temples now or as engaged as we were before, and so we really appreciate all of you coming together, giving us your association, giving us your input, and we appreciate our wonderful speakers as well. So our classes will continue. So we do have classes 5 days a week now. Monday through Friday. Weekends are already quite full with lots of other sanghas going on, so there's no shortage of Zoom class during the weekend. So we're just covering Monday through Friday, and we're getting a very good turnout thanks to all of you. And so tomorrow we'll continue with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj on the second canto Srimad Bhagavatam, and then next week we have another slate of yet another group of wonderful devotees. So please keep joining us. Thank you very much. And if you'd like to say a quick Hare Krishna to Mother Madhumati.
Hi, Hare Krishna.
Come here.
I'm missing you.
Hare Krishna. Jai.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhumati Mataji, for wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Nilamani Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Wonderful discussion.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Haribol, thank you a lot.
Jai.
Hari
Jai. Samait Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Nitai Gaur.
Haribol.
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.